Hello and welcome to another Lunch and Learn Hangout session sponsored by ATSU University Information Technology and Services Group. We are now on Season 2. I believe this is Episode 14, Video. Should be a really good topic today. We've got a great group, great group of video experts from our very own ITS staff. So we have with us, kind of going from my far left, Dean Mogg. And then next to him is Corey Sanford. So Dean and Corey are based on the Missouri campus of AT Still. And then to my immediate left, as I look at my screen, is Kelly Richardson, and Kelly's based out of our Arizona campus. So thank you guys. Can all wave simultaneously. And then, as always, we have with us to the far left on my screen is Jean Varnold controlling the camera shots, production elements, and she'll be monitoring the questions or helping us monitor the questions as well. So please, if you have questions, start queuing them up. And remember, you can also vote on questions too. So I'm hopeful that we'll have lots of questions for today because video is a really big topic. And so we've debated whether we could get all of the stuff in that we wanted to get in with just one session. We're going to give it a shot, and if people still have questions, then we'll consider coming back and doing another session on a particular segment if we need to. But we're going to give it a try. And to help us kind of go through it, we're going to put up a little presentation more to help our thoughts and kind of channel the conversation a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. All right. And so we have video. And as you can see, there are just tons and tons of products and things and vendors and services and whatnot here. Video in general is an area of just major disruption and change right now. And you can kind of see that a little bit from the consumer market. If you think about the consumer market with things like Hulu Plus and Netflix and Amazon announcing just in the past couple weeks a new video player. There are lots of things going on with video and video moving to the web in a way that's different than it has been in the past, or at least it's more accessible than it has been in the past. So we're going to try and go through those, whether it's live video and what we call streaming, or whether it's recorded video that people download. We can integrate audio and do narrations now over video or graphics as we're creating different video segments. How to use video inside and outside of class. We're going to try and get our arms around a lot of those topics, and there are lots of variations and lots of options. So what we've done is we've tried to break it down into just 4 discussion areas. So tried to create kind of 4 general topics. The first topic is where we're going to try and spend a majority of the time, or more time maybe than the others, and that's what we call video and web conferencing options. And so that's kind of the live type scenarios. A part that we're doing here, we'll go into a little bit more detail and filter those down a little bit more. But that's what we're going to try and talk about a little bit first. And you can see some of the product graphics associated with that type of discussion. And then we'll go into creating video and options for creating video, and that would be more recorded type materials that we'll talk about there. We'll talk a little bit about storage and distribution, because there are a variety of places that the video can be stored and distributed from. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into some special cases with the classroom tools and talk a little bit about those areas too. All right, so let's go into that area number 1, video and web conferencing, and we're going to break that down a little bit further into 2 types of common use cases. So the first use case are meetings. In a little bit different second use case are more like courses, seminars, lunch and learns. I should have added events in there. Things that are, as opposed to meetings where everyone's participating, that second use case is more where it's one or a small number of people presenting to a larger audience. So a little bit different use cases there. And we know it's an oversimplification, but we think it'll help. In terms of volume, this is the big use case for video within ATSU right now. I mean, we are doing certainly dozens of sessions each week. I don't know if we're to the point where we're doing hundreds of sessions, but I'll bet it's close. Hundreds of sessions each week, or certainly dozens each week, that are with hundreds of participants each week. So we can see the volume looking at some of our statistics, and we know that this is the big area. One thing to think about here is, we'll get into this a little bit more, how the technologies are kind of blurring when we talk about video and web conferencing, and that's why we're including both of them here. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So what are some of the things that we think about when we talk about meetings? They're real time, so those are live type sessions. They're typically highly interactive where everyone is participating. So you want to see body language, you want to see the video of everyone who's participating. It brings a little bit richer experience to the session. More and more, there's lots of locations, so you need to be flexible because people's plans will change at the last minute, and rather than being in a conference room, they may be on the road and want to participate just on an audio session. There may be different connection types. You know, if someone's at their rural vacation home, they may not have as good a broadband experience, and so the connection might be a little bit different. So lots of flexibility there. And as the number of participants goes up, so does the complexity. And so some of these meetings can actually be quite complex when you start thinking about how many different people are involved in the sessions. Supplemental tools, think about collaboration. So now with meetings, we're collaborating a lot, we're sharing information, and everyone within the meeting can actually participate there. And it looks like the one that got cut off is recording. And so do we need to record the session? So these are the kinds of things that we think about when we talk about meetings. How many participants, what types of locations, what type of interactivity or collaboration, and does the session need to be recorded? So let's dive and filter it down a little bit further yet. So if we talk about that first use case of meetings, let's break it down into 4 different types of meeting type scenarios. So we'll break it down into use case 1A. And that's where you're trying to connect 2 or more conference rooms. So this is more of a traditional type of approach. Dean, maybe you can kind of lead us on a conversation about traditional video conferencing and talk about that first use case there.
Right. And for traditional video conferencing, you're thinking of a group of people physically located in one room talking to a group of people physically located in another room, or it can be one-to-one, but it's based on the big size room. And the reason that's different than like a personal video conference is your audio and your speaker need to be broadcast. So you run the risk of having your audio looping and echoing. So we typically there use like a life-size appliance for that. They're very expensive to begin with. We have to pay an annual fee on it, so that's why they're not very widespread. But that's kind of the traditional video conferencing option where you most have right now is the life-size units.
So those are conference room type scenarios, and I agree. If you think of video conferencing in that sense, it's basically an appliance that is specifically dedicated to video conferencing, right? All right, now let's contrast that a little bit with scenario B. So scenario B is still connecting 2 or more people, but now they're at their desks rather than in a conference room. And maybe Corey, you can take that one.
Sure, Brian. Yeah, we're seeing more and more of the desktop software-based conferencing applications coming into use because they're just becoming so much more powerful than they have been in the past. Google Hangouts is a big one, and that's kind of the icon we have here. Since we're on a Google Gmail here, that's really tightly integrated inside of Gmail, so it's really easy to do essentially a video broadcast with you and, well, like what we're doing right now, basically is a hangout. So uh, basically, the difference between this and what Dean was speaking to with the life-size units is this is somewhat better geared towards one-on-one, like we're doing here. There's 5 of us in a meeting, each at our computer with a headset on. You don't have the echoing issues. It becomes a little more problematic, although we have been using this somewhat in boardrooms with specialized web cameras with echo canceling speakerphones. The best quality, though, you're going to get with the Hangout scenario, or that includes things like WebEx or Collaborate, Join Me. Yeah, all of those kind of fall in the same boat. They tend to be better geared towards somebody at their desktop, but again, with some specialized hardware, they can be kind of used in limited group meetings. And the kind of a nice advantage you get, not only is it easy to use, it's cheap because they're like Hangouts is free, it's included, quick to do. You're not going to need to really have us set up any really specialized hardware to do a Hangout with somebody. It's probably the collaboration that you get inside of them. Hangouts is really tightly integrated with the Google Docs platform, and you can collaboratively pull up documents and work on them together in real time inside of a Hangout. So it's really powerful in that regard. Screen sharing, you can share your screen if there's things outside of the Google Docs environment that you want to highlight. It's just very versatile. So I would say Hangouts is probably the most popular. There's others, but that's kind of the plus that you get with that.
And we'll talk through a little bit more some of the pluses and minuses of each. But you did a good job there, Corey, of kind of leading into the next stage. If you think about it historically, so conference rooms, the scenario A is the oldest technology. That's been around for 20 plus years, where it's been dedicated hardware where people will connect conference room to conference room. And typically there are, as a company or as an institution, there are a limited number of rooms. So at AT Still now we have, I would say, 20 some rooms, maybe a few more than that have the conference room capabilities. And we'll get into that a little bit too. You can look up what conference rooms have this kind of capability, and in many cases we can bring mobile units to a conference room if you have one. So contrast that with scenario B, where really everyone has a workstation or a PC at their desk, and almost everyone has a web camera now and a headset. So the volume for scenario B is just a lot higher. Scenario C is where we're going to call on Kelly, because she's really been kind of helping with the Scopia desktop product that kind of merges scenario A and B, right, Kelly?
That's right. So Scopia Desktop is a video conferencing software that's available for download from the public Scopia Desktop portal, which is at scopia.atsu.edu. So it does require a download, kind of similar to apps like Skype or Uvu. So somewhat unlike Google Hangouts, where it's kind of a part of that whole Google suite of products. But desktop does enable the connection of multiple video conferencing participants that are using mobile devices or PCs or Macs, and that includes also video conferencing endpoints like LifeSize, and all these participants can connect through virtual meeting rooms. And it's very basic. It does have recording tools, screen sharing, and chat features, but that's kind of it. It's not quite as elaborate for tools as Google Hangouts or some of those other chat video conferencing tools that we have available.
Right, but the nice part is if you have a couple of conference rooms with several people in it, but one person happens to be at a hotel, they can still get on and participate with the conference rooms from their desktop, from their laptop.
Correct, or a mobile device, iPad.
Yeah,
Android
right.
device.
Yep. So that's the next one. Really, is again, if you think historically, now what we're trying to do is add people in with whatever device they have, whether it's their smartphone or a traditional phone. They're driving and trying to call in, and they can only listen to the audio. adding in mobile and phone participants is the next stage. So really, what we've done is moved from the traditional environment of A, kind of into this area D, where any type of device, as long as it's connected to the internet, can participate, connect to the internet or via phone, can connect to a session. Dean, maybe you can talk a little bit about bridging. So when you get into traditional video conferencing, we have these things called bridges, right?
Right, and depending on the model of appliance you have, for like the life-size appliance, some of them will do internal bridging where you can call and get 4 or 8 people into a call. A lot of the units we have are that way, but we have other units that are just point-to-point, where normally they will just connect 2 people together, 2 points together. If in that situation you need to have something in between that will gather calls from all the different people and stick them together into one call. We use Scopia a lot for that, but the thing behind Scopia is a bridge that we have on the Mesa campus that brings everybody together and ties them into one call. And it also, if somebody is at a higher bandwidth than another person, it kind of matches them together to where everybody can work together into one call.
So with the traditional conference room type equipment, it is a little bit more difficult to get multiple participants in, multiple locations in.
And very expensive as well.
And a lot more expensive, exactly. Whereas let's wait a little bit on the questions, Gene, if that's where you were going.
I was going there. We have a couple in.
Okay, good. Yeah, if people would, please add your questions and vote on those that are there. That'll help us kind of hit the highlights. Hopefully we'll have time to hit them all, but if not, then that'll tell us which ones other people are thinking about. But before we go on to the next use case, what would you guys think are some tips for people to use for meeting type scenarios? You know, I'm thinking of things like the benefits of a headset. So one of you want to talk about that a little bit? And I know one of the questions about echoing, so maybe you can talk about the use of a headset and how it eliminates some of the echoing.
Yeah, I could maybe speak to that a little bit. Basically, what you find with the what the headset is essentially doing is, since you're wearing the earphones here and the microphone here, the feedback that you end up getting is because the microphone is close to where the speakers are at. And a lot of the standard web cameras that you would have on top of your computer, they hang up kind of on top of the monitor. The microphone is right there next to the speakers, and so that's kind of why you get, if you use a web camera like that, you kind of get this I can hear myself talking kind of a thing, because the microphone is picking up the sound from the computer. And we have in the past tried to use the web cameras in a conference room, and you run into the same scenario. You've got the web camera hanging up on top of the TV with the microphone, and the speaker and the television is right there next to it, and so it kind of tends to pick up the sound from that, and so you get that echoing. Now, having said that, we've got a new product that we've been using pretty successfully. We affectionately call it the eyeball camera, but it's basically a Logitech USB external web camera / speakerphone. And so what we do is we can take the speakerphone then and put it on the table away from the TV with a long USB cord going back to the computer. And you can kind of use a Hangout in these group meeting rooms if they're not very large, using that technology, and it works. We're finding it's working really, really well. It keeps getting better and better all the time. Again, you're somewhat limited to the size of the room that you would have, but it's definitely making it a lot more possible for people to conduct Hangouts in the boardroom scenario.
So that's kind of the current state of affairs, right? Where the traditional video conferencing really did a good job of echo cancellation because it was used to having everyone in a single room. But when things started to move to the web more, that technology really hadn't evolved yet. So right now, this current state of affairs is it's getting better. And web cameras are getting better. We've got the specialized eyeball camera and some other tools that do the echo canceling. So that's kind of the current state. Is that fair?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And then the other thing we find too is even a lot of people we have that are using the iPad as into like a Hangout, And occasionally with that, even with the iPad, you'll get the same scenario with the feedback. So I recommend to a lot of people is to use a little pair of like your iPad headphones. So you plug your headphones into your ears, you'll eliminate all the echo because the sound is going in the earbuds, and the iPad then can pick up the sound, and you won't have those issues.
Right, the
So
microphone doesn't pick up the sound.
right, that's
So
kind of the main.
that's pro tip number one, is especially with web-based video conferencing or desktop video conferencing or web conferencing, use a headset. It really makes the experience a lot better. Another tip that I would give people is, especially with Google Hangouts, learn how to use the mute control. A lot of times, especially as you get more people involved in a conference, it's easy to talk over one another, and that can get a little bit confusing. The technology is getting better where it knows who to listen to, and it can kind of overlap those a little bit more. But being able to mute your session is really helpful to eliminate background noise, especially if you're at a home environment, where you may have a dog barking or kids in the background or something like that. So that would be another pro tip. Another one is add your profile. So if you have a profile, more and more of the tools will put a little picture up of who's speaking, and having a profile there is helpful to know who's actually doing the talking. Anything else you guys would add as kind of pro tips or things for people to think about?
Testing.
Yeah, testing. You call it testing, I'll call it playing. Don't be afraid to play. Right? Get on there, get in a little bit early, and make sure that everything is connected and working well. It's just like, the first time you go to a new location, you want to leave a little bit early in case you run into traffic or something else. Same kind of thing with a virtual meeting. That's a good one, right, Kelly?
Something I'd like to throw in too is on using a mobile device. If you're traveling someplace or you're going to be someplace and you don't have a hotspot, IT does have a hotspot you can check out. And then as long as you have connectivity, phone connectivity, Sprint connectivity, you can use that hotspot and join in.
Good
so
point.
It's just something to keep in mind.
Right. So
I would like to add one little thing to that, just while I'm thinking about it, is voice is possible in Hangouts now. So if you do have somebody that is in a location that can't do the video conferencing but yet still wants to participate in the meeting, there is the ability to tie in a phone number into a Hangout for free. So
correct, and that's Uber Conference, I think, is the tool that's part of.
I think you can actually just do a single phone line. So if you had a conference, an existing 800 number, that a conference line that you wanted to use, I think you could just, everybody could connect into that, and then the Hangout would dial into that same conference. So you could use that without Uber Conference, but Uber Conference will allow you to do conferencing as well.
Right. And what's nice about the Uber Conference tool is, again, I was talking about those profiles, so that's a good example where Uber Conference will show who's participating just on the phone. And if you have a profile set up, it will give a little profile so that it indicates to the other participants of the session when you're talking who you are. We've all been on conference calls where it's hard to tell who's talking all of the time, and Uber Conference does a good job of kind of simplifying that. All right. Yeah, keep the questions coming in, and then we'll break in a little bit and talk to some questions. Let's go. So that's use case number one, are kind of the meetings where everyone's participating. Let's go to the next use case, which call it courses, seminars, events. This is more the session, still real time, so we're still talking about live, but it's less interactive. It's more presentation style, where, like in our case, we have a small panel who's presenting to all of the viewers. In a course type situation, you may have one faculty member who's participating in a lecture or giving a lecture to a bunch of students. The participant connections may still vary. So you may have people who are remote somewhere where they don't have good connectivity. Some may be on a phone, some may be on their smartphone, some may be at a hotel room. So we're still going to have different types of connections. And again, the number of options are going to increase as the number of participants does. And then the last thing to be thinking about here is when you do a course or a seminar using this type of scenario, do you want it to be recorded? So that's always something to think about. So again, I guess let's just go right around the horn. Dean, you want to take that first use case, that first one for A, Google Hangouts?
Sure. And this is more for a small group of people. The Google Hangouts that we have has a 15-person limit, so you're kind of tied to that. But using that, you can also limit who gets to see your content. You can invite a small group of people and block out other people and have it to where it's more locked down instead of broadcast to the world that anybody can access it with a link.
All right. And then let's contrast that, Corey, if you would, with Blackboard Collaborate, which is the tool I think we would recommend if you had more than 15 people.
Yeah, I think Collaborate will support, is it up to 100 simultaneous users? So yep. You can have quite a few people in one of those sessions. Essentially same kinds of screen sharing tools. All of that's embedded in it.
For Collaborate, though, it doesn't include the video for all of those 100 people, correct?
I believe so. It's been a little while since I've been in Collaborate, so I think that's correct. But I'm not sure.
I don't think so. I think the way that it works is there's an avatar that exists for anyone after maybe, I think it's 6 video sessions that can be active at one time. Now you can switch between different people. So if you had 6 people who were presenting part A of a topic and then a different 6 people who were presenting part B of a topic, you could switch those video sessions out so that all 12 could, but only 6 could be working at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then maybe talk a little bit about privacy and interactivity. What types of tools do we have with Hangouts versus Blackboard Collaborate?
Well, I guess like in the Hangouts portion, that can be tied to just ATSU addresses. You can invite external participants in that. But now, when you speak about the Hangouts on air, the kind of the difference between the Hangouts on air versus the standard Hangout, you almost kind of have 2 sessions with the Hangouts on air. You've got the session that you're in, the Hangout session, and then you've got the on-air portion, which that generally, and I think to my knowledge, would be public. So, I mean, if you were going to do a Hangout on air, that tends to be more of a public kind of a thing. So you're pretty much limited, because what that does is it actually takes the Hangout session, like we're in a Hangout session now, and it's actually simultaneously broadcasting that session to your YouTube channel. So you have to have a YouTube channel in order to use Hangouts on air. And another note with that is it is delayed, since it has to do that. So here we're talking and interacting in real time, but if somebody who's watching the on-air portion of this, there's probably a good minute or 2 delay, depending on bandwidth and whatnot, that the people that are watching the on-air portion are getting. So just keep that in mind, I guess.
I guess that's something else for as far as Collaborate versus the traditional Hangout is Collaborate. You get it set up. You can have something like this set up at the beginning of a semester and have a link that you put inside of a Blackboard course where only the students that are in your Blackboard course can see that link. They can click into it, and then you can have a set up meeting time where everybody on Thursday nights comes and they click there and can go into this Collaborate link. Inside there, then Collaborate has some tools for interaction too, as far as voting and there's a little bit of interactivity that can go on as well on Collaborate.
Yeah, I think with the Collaborate, the tool that I really like is if you're going to break up into small groups. Then Collaborate has a nice tool that allows you to break up into small groups, and then the moderator can actually go into each of those small groups. So you could have, 3 or 4 different conversations going all as a small group conversation within Blackboard Collaborate, and then bring everyone back together in the big group and have, kind of a report out type of thing. So that's a nice feature. And then with the Hangouts, The collaboration features there are just fantastic, where people can collaborate all on a single document, presentation. We use that a ton. So the collaboration tools within Hangouts are just fantastic. All right. Should we talk at all about live events? So we're talking about courses and seminars, but and these would be live events. But I'm thinking of more like what we're doing for the groundbreaking for Mazdo coming up. A lot of times we'll do graduation scenarios. Talk a little bit about how those would fit into this. Is more scenario C, I would say. Hey.
Yeah, it's more of a we're watching, you're broadcasting kind of a scenario. Now, having said that, we have a new product we're using now called Livestream, which does have the stream available, but there is a interactive chat in the stream, so you can kind of interact somewhat with it. But you're not going to, it's really meant for more of a one-way, I'm watching the presentation and maybe adding some comments, and some moderation may be done at that location. We're just really starting to get used to that product now, but it's looking really promising, and we're looking at using it for the groundbreaking and some of these live events where we're out on remote, essentially. Because what we've done internally up to this point in time, we've had to use our big TriCaster switching device that we have here, and this livestream.net allows just basically a one camera kind of a stream, so it's kind of versatile for us for these on-site type streams. So.
All right, good. All right, before we go to the next slide, I'm going to try something a little bit different. If you would, the question I'm going to put out there on the table is, okay, so is everyone thoroughly confused with all of these different options? So if someone would add a question in that says yes, and those people who are thoroughly confused plus that one. If you're not thoroughly confused, then someone add no, and let's vote on that so we can at least get some feedback. We'll try and use the question tool. It's not really designed to work that way, but we'll try it. So if you would, someone add a yes and someone add a no, and then let's vote on just how confusing all of this stuff is as we get into the next slide. And really, that's what we're trying to do with this next slide, is summarize some of the different choice options and put some recommendations together. So Dean, maybe you can kind of walk us through this slide a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of busy. What I've kind of done here is just kind of separated it into columns the different products that we commonly use, and then as to the features they have. If you're going to go down, whether you use it a conference room or a conference room or desktop to mobile, I've just kind of put X's in there. I don't know how well this comes across in the YouTube stream that we're doing, but we could post it online as well. All of the choices kind of do desktop sharing. Hangouts are really good for the collaboration, and recording is kind of limited to a few items. And that kind of shows here the life size is the most expensive, and the Hangout is free.
All right, good. So yeah, so if we look at the first row, conference room to conference room, if that's the type of scenario that you're envisioning, then life size would be recommended, or maybe Scopia, and using Scopia for 1 or 2 sessions to interact with the conference rooms. So those would be our recommendations there. When you look at row 2, the desktop or mobile meeting, there we're really talking about Hangouts. So Hangouts would be a good tool, maybe Scopia, or maybe Blackboard Collaborate, again, depending upon the number of participants that you have. If you're going to include both conference rooms and desktop and mobile units there, Scopia is really the tool that we would look at. If you're talking about desktop sharing, all of them have some component of desktop sharing. So what we're thinking about there is if you're giving a presentation and you want to show it to everybody else, that's really what that tool would be. So for simple presentations and sharing information, you can see all of the products do that. But when we go to the next row, row 4, then collaboration, the best tool there is really Hangouts. And so that's what we would recommend there. If you want to record the sessions, there are recording options for Hangouts on Air and Scopia. So those are the limitations of LifeSize and Google Hangouts Traditional. They don't record. but Blackboard Collaborate and the others do. If we want to do web streaming like we talked about for live events, then Hangouts on Air is a good tool. The last couple of rows there are pretty important. So if you look at the number of participants, that's really what drives what tool a lot of times, is how many people you think are going to be participating in a session. And I think that's a good row to look at and kind of match up with what tool is the best tool for a given scenario. And then we also wanted to include a little bit on pricing and how much these tools actually cost. So life size, high quality. Again, it's conference room to conference room. It's got dedicated equipment, so you get a lot of that echo cancellation going on, but it's a very expensive tool. We have to pay not only for the equipment, which is very expensive, but we pay for maintenance on that equipment. So if you contrast that with the next one there, Google Hangouts, we really don't pay anything for that. That's part of our Google Apps for Education suite. So you can see that there's a fairly big shift that's happening in the marketplace just between those two as conferencing goes from the traditional life-size type market into the web-based Hangouts type market. Scopia is somewhere in between. Not quite as expensive, but really it's a part of the life-size kind of ecosystem. So those two kind of go a little bit more hand in hand. And I think the Hangout, Skype, GoToMeeting type tools, they're at the point now where they're trying to bring in some of those tools for conference room type scenarios as well. So we just got a new tool in to start testing with called the Chromebox for Hangouts or something like that. It's basically Google's idea of Scopia for being able to include conference rooms as well as individual participants in Hangouts. Hangouts on Air is also free, and then Blackboard Collaborate again is a tool that has some nice features in it that we don't see in the others, but we do have to pay a little bit for that as part of our Blackboard licensing.
Brian, could I interject there that just to remind everyone, each school has a Blackboard Collaborate room, and there is someone in your school that can set them up for you. So if you don't know about that, just give me a call and I'll tell you who it is. Also, we have rooms that the help desk can set up and the library can set up for you. So it's very easy to get those if you've not done them before.
Good point. Thanks, Gene. All right, let's break here for questions. And Gene, maybe you can kind of queue them up. As you're queuing them up, I'm going to say we must have done a pretty decent job of explaining because we didn't get any yeses, as in people are still really confused. So that's good. Oh, you muted yourself.
Okay, I will start with the first one, and then I will go through and take off all the ones that have responded no, and just go down through the questions. So,
okay, good.
I believe we answered it, but Melinda Blackburn was asking, using Google Hangouts, does that alleviate the echoing?
The quick answer to that is probably no. It doesn't, although there are tools now that do allow us to eliminate the echoing. You can reduce the echoing a lot if you use a headset. So that would be the recommendation there. If you're going to use Hangouts, either use a headset, or if you're in an office all by yourself and there's not much background noise, then typically that's a decent workable situation too.
And we have been having a lot of good luck with those eyeball cameras as well. So if somebody wants to try to use it, I know we have some departments using Hangouts in the conference room scenario, and it's working fairly well. It's a minimal investment. I think the camera is a couple $100. But it does a pretty good job for small groups and meetings. So that's kind of filling a gap a little bit there.
And we've also started to experiment with some of the new companies now that this idea of cloud video conferencing has kind of started to evolve a lot more. Companies like Logitech are coming out with, instead of us having to physically remove the eyeball from the speaker, they're starting to do that themselves. So there are a lot of good price points of conferencing cameras that we're starting to look at that are still kind of on the more expensive side, but as we start to experiment more with like the Chromebox and stuff, we'll start to maybe incorporate products like that into conference rooms. so that we can alleviate that echo problem and still use products like Google Hangout maybe in conference rooms.
Good point. Yeah, the cost point's really coming down on those things. All right, what else?
Okay, Cynthia Porter. What about Skype for students who are not on Google Plus? Some DHSC faculty use that to connect with students.
Yeah, Skype is a decent tool. I don't know that I would have a strong recommendation against it, other than the fact that because all of ATSU has Google Apps for Education, we all have Google Hangouts. We all have that. So it's just a matter of the first time going through and setting up your profile. The benefit, I think, to using the Hangouts is not so much in the Hangouts tool, it's in the coordination with all of the other tools. So now when you start using Hangouts, you can incorporate Google Docs and do a lot more collaboration there. Skype doesn't have quite as many features and functions in that world, and of course, because more and more people are using Google Apps for education, the learning curve there tends to be a little bit better, and we can support it better. So Skype is a decent tool. We see that a fair amount in other areas, but if given a choice, I think I would move them to Hangouts.
And
You
plus,
guys have
Skype
any-
is also point to point. It's one person to one person unless you pay for the extra for the premium, which is like $9.99 a month.
Good point. So cost is another factor.
And you kind of get into the same boat a little bit. We didn't really hit on it very much, but like, for example, in a Hangout, if somebody's going to use a Hangout, they have to have a Gmail account to use Hangouts. So that's kind of one thing we didn't really mention, but we all have one because we're here. But the same idea goes for Skype as well. So anybody that's going to use Skype has to sign up for a Skype account, which is actually a Microsoft product now. But and Gmail, if you had people that wanted to join in that don't have Google, I mean, it's free to get a Google account. So it's kind of a throw out there on that one.
Okay, next is Margaret Hoogland. Which product do you recommend when working with students? We may have trouble getting into Collaborate, or they do not have a Google Plus account.
Yeah, I think the chart probably answered most of those questions. It depends on the number of participants that you have. And as we said, all students do have a Google Hangout capability. They have to activate their Google Plus profile. And that is increasingly getting easier to do. So, in fact, I just saw a week or so ago that there are now tools where we can automatically set students up to have a Google Plus profile. So increasingly, I think those issues will go away. So in general, I think I would tend to move them toward the Google Plus and Hangouts environment over Collaborate, but there are some situations where Collaborate makes more sense.
And one of the things with Collaborate as well, where we see issues, are people who don't have a Java completely up to date. Because Collaborate's based on Java, and it depends on the person's computer and which browser they're using. And so if you're having a student with a problem, have them update Java for sure, or try a different browser, or even try a different computer sometimes, because with the Java, there's so many updates that come out with Java all the time. It's always hard to keep up for students. That being said, Collaborate, I did talk to them at the end of last year. They said they were working on a new version, completely revamped version of Collaborate that was going to be HTML5 based, where it wouldn't use Java. It would be separate and easier and more friendly to use.
Okay, I'm going to go on from Larry Olson. Have you ever tried Uvu? That seems to work very well.
Yeah, Uvu is a nice tool. And yes, we've used it within IT. I'm sure that there are some other people who've used it as well. It's a very nice tool. There are lots of nice tools out there. And really, in my mind, the difference between one and the other is almost preference at this point. They're mostly commodity type services, unless you have a highly specific use case where one may have one feature that makes more sense. So Uvu is a nice one. GoToMeeting is a nice tool. Skype has its place. There are some other a little bit further out there tools that are very nice. I think is it Blue Jeans is one that's a very nice product. What's the one that Google is based on?
Video?
Video is another nice product. So what we're trying to do is filter all of those types of things. We've looked at most of them, and we really feel that the Google Plus Hangouts is probably the simplest tool that's the most common for people. So we're trying to just filter those things. If you have a specific use case, then let us know, and we'd be happy to entertain it. We don't have a strong preference to one over the other, but just to try and make it easier for people to make those choices.
Okay, continuing with questions. Jane Johnson, can people who don't have video cameras and or web access use Scopia?
Good question. I don't know. Kelly, you know that one?
You can use Scopia Desktop without a webcam, although it kind of negates the purpose of the whole video conferencing. But you can use it with just a headset and communicate just via, voice. You'll just get a little black box where your webcam will show up or should show up. However, you cannot access Scopia Desktop without web access, without internet access. Not only can you not download the client, you cannot connect to the to this virtual Scopia room.
Okay, from Michelle Pinico, can we get a copy of your slides for later reference?
Yep, absolutely, no problem. We'll put them in a link to them in the chat. And you're absolutely welcome to have them. And please, if you would, add comments to them so that we can make them better and more useful to people.
Okay, Jane Johnson, I was a little late. You may have addressed this already. For use case number 1, meetings, do all the options allow you to share documents where everyone can discuss and people can edit?
No, I guess they don't all allow that collaboration tool. And we did go through that on one of the slides, Jane, so you can see it a little bit easier. All of the tools allow you to share like a PowerPoint presentation. So that's, I guess, pseudo collaboration. But if you are really talking about sharing documents and working on documents, they don't all enable that.
Okay, next question is Jane again. We had problems previously, 6 months to a year ago, with Collaborate, people using Macs. Is that still an issue?
Off and on. It just depends on when Mac does their operating system updates and Java does their updates. It's a Java issue is what it is, and Apple and Java have not gotten along well lately. But hopefully, in the near future, whenever Collaborate goes to HTML5 based web conferencing, it'll be a lot better.
Okay, and then the final question we have queued up is from Melinda Blackburn. You talk about using different browsers. Do some browsers support Hangouts, Scopia, etc. better than others?
I don't know. I'm sure that there are some differences, but I've seen it mostly be fairly subtle. Do you guys have any feedback on that?
I've had a little issue from time to time with the Scopia product, the desktop product that runs on a computer, not being happy with certain browsers. Normally, as a safe route with Scopia, I've always recommended if you're on a PC, use Internet Explorer. If you're on a Mac, use Safari. Now, Dean told me that Firefox works well with Scopia desktop, but that's certainly something that you can always try if you're having a problem. Now, like Hangouts, obviously, it's cross-platform. It's gonna work. It works really best in Chrome because that's a Google product. But anytime you have issues with something, it's not a bad thing to try another browser because there are certainly issues, like Dean mentioned the Java thing with Collaborate. Occasionally you'll have a little bug that maybe one browser hasn't quite fixed yet, then you can bring it up in another browser and it'll work just fine. So that's a good safe thing to always try. It's just if you're having an issue, try another browser. It's easy to do. And I don't know about you, I have all three on my computer. I have Firefox.
And I think we can do a better job too of trying to identify those areas where one browser does have issues. The challenge there is a lot of times it's a temporary issue because they'll update the browser or something else will change, and so it's hard to keep that stuff up to date. The best, my recommendation there would be just to do a Google search, and see if other people are having that same kind of problem. Or call the help desk and they can help you go through a Google search. Sometimes they know a little bit more tips and tricks to search a little bit easier. All right, so we hit a lot of questions.
All of my revised documentation for Scopia Desktop includes recommended browser and versions. And I've been trying to keep that up to date because in the past 6 months, Internet Explorer has not been successful for installing the initial client.
Okay, good. And I guess the next question people would have is, where do I get this documentation? So what we're trying to do within ITS is get people in the habit of using our ITS page and the search function on our ITS page. So if you go to its.atsu.edu, it's a site that's just dedicated for ATSU, so you need to have your Google Apps account activated in order to get in. But then in the upper right-hand corner is a search box. And if you type in a few keywords into that search box, like video conferencing, it will bring up all of the information that we have related to video conferencing and these types of documentation. All right, so we don't have much time, but let's try to go through quick kind of that next discussion area that we talked about, which is video creation. And here there are, again, lots of options, and they depend on interactivity, what type of editing tools you want to have, whether you're wanting to do screen captures, where that file is going to be output, ease of use. Maybe in the interest of time, rather than talking through some of those, let's just go right to the next slide. And Dean, maybe you can take this one and kind of talk through some of the issues here, just high level, to give people a sense of what tools make sense under what situations.
All right, very good. The list of products we have here is by no means complete. There's hundreds of products that are out there. These are some of the more common ones we see used here at ATSU. So I have Camtasia, Echo 360, Articulate, Adobe Presenter, and SoftChalk. The first row across is screen capture, and pretty much all of them do that except for SoftChalk. It's where you can record what's going on your screen. You can demonstrate things with a voiceover and have people follow what you're doing. Interactivity, being able to have a quiz in there and something that the student doesn't just watch, they more have to participate and have to wake up and not just be a zombie and watch the video. They have to actually interact with it. Camtasia, Articulate, and Presenter and SoftChalk are good at this. They're all where you can build quizzes in there. And the next thing there kind of is the gradebook integration. And these quizzes can be tied in if you put them within Blackboard, or they'll tie into a gradebook in Blackboard and add to a student's score. Next line I put down was editing capability. All of them have some sort of editing. Camtasia is really advanced. It's pretty much a video editing program, and you can add all sorts of things in with it to the video timeline-based editing. Echo 360, on the other end of the spectrum, is really basic. You can take a chunk off the beginning and a chunk off the end, and when you're editing it and recording it, there's not much to the Echo 360, but it's super easy to use. The Articulate and Presenter and SoftChalk all have editing features too, and they're depending on the product how hard they are to use and the features they have. They're pretty advanced though. PowerPoint plugin, Camtasia, Articulate, and Presenter all can record directly from PowerPoint, or if you're using that as your presentation materials, you can use this and just go straight from PowerPoint, record your audio, flip through the slides as you're doing it, and at the end it produces a little packaged PowerPoint recording that you can upload. And you can edit that as well after you're done recording it. File outputs, this is how you want your file to go out to your viewers. Camtasia goes to pretty much any major file type. You can make a package that you would upload in a Blackboard. Video formats, pretty much any of them. Audio formats too. You can export audio. And then the other end of the spectrum is Echo, and it can only publish to the Echo server into a course. So you're recording this, and if you have a course set up within Echo, you can use it to publish directly into the course. Articulate, Presenter, and SoftChalk are more of a package thing where you do your recordings, you do your interactivity, and then when you publish it, it makes it into a package that you then upload into Blackboard, and then it links your audio and video and your quizzes and everything together with the Blackboard course itself. Ease of use. I don't know if this comes across in the YouTube, those little brains. Camtasia is a pretty steep learning curve because it is very feature rich. So I mean, it takes some time to get into using it. Echo 360 is dead simple. It would show you in 5 minutes how to use it. Articulate, Presenter, and SoftChalk there's a lot of features with those. So any of these, really, you need to take some time, and depending on what you want to do, play with it. You can't really break anything, so definitely play with them and learn the functionalities. There's tons of stuff online for support and documentation for these things. And then cost, Camtasia is fairly cheap, but it's an individual license. All these pretty much are individual licenses where you have to maybe contact the help desk and get a quote for these, but then it would probably go back to each individual person having to have a license for it, and it could be a cost per person. Echo 360 is free, though. It's part of the Echo 360 product that we use in the classrooms, and it's all linked together, so that's a free product. And Articulate and Presenter are fairly expensive. They're $1,000-ish range, so they're pretty expensive even for the educational version of those. And SoftChalk's kind of I put that as a medium expense.
Good, Dean. That's a good highlight. And we should also put a plug in too for faculty members or staff, I guess either, who are interested in using these tools. If you want someone to kind of help you with these tools, you can certainly come to the help desk, and we'll get you hooked up with some of the academic technologies folks. But I'd really encourage you to go to the library. They've got some people, Margaret and Bill. Margaret on the Missouri campus and Bill Coombs on the Arizona campus, who are familiar with not necessarily all of them and not necessarily as detailed knowledge on all of them. They're increasing their skill sets as we're going through this as well, but they can certainly help you with some of the thought processes of going through each of these tools. So Bill and Margaret, if you guys are there and you want to kick me after giving you guys too much work, let me know. But I think they do a great job with what I've seen them do training on some of these other tools. All right, let's go quick to questions, and then I guess I'd just take a quick poll since we're almost out of time here. Do people want to go back and have us do another session on a little bit more with video? Video storage and distribution is one thing, and then also the classroom tools. So if you would, just in the question, kind of give us some feedback there, and we'll be able to filter it.
Okay, the question I have up is from Beth Thompson. I know you all may not know this answer, but do you know if any of these tools create ADA compliant files? We have a huge challenge convincing our faculty that they need transcripts for videos in order to be ADA compliant.
Yeah, good point. Do you guys know for any of these tools? I've got another hint that I'll give, but on these tools, do you guys know ADA compliance?
Hangout on Air would do to YouTube, which I think would transcribe the text, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go too. If you create the video, one way to get text is to post it to YouTube, post your video to YouTube, and then YouTube has a tool or a feature where it will automatically transcribe what's in the video. It doesn't always do a perfect job, but it does a pretty darn good job, and it's free. So the cost is right. We do have some services that we use to pay for transcription of different things. I don't know of any of these other tools, though, that do automatic transcription. I don't think so. Echo 360 is the one where we hear it the most for classroom type situations, because we're using Echo 360 to record all of the classroom lectures. People would really like to see transcripts of that, and I know they're thinking about it. I know it's on their roadmap, but I haven't seen that feature announced. Do you know, Dean?
Echo 360, you can there's an external service that we have to pay for. It's like $150 an hour of transcription, but it's something we can do. That's more for an in-class live audience than that it gets published to the web. I'm more familiar with Camtasia too for the products we were talking about, and it does support ADA type captioning, but then again, it's like you say, you have to create the captioning, you have to have the file and put it in there, so you can do that. I think there are ways to do it with the other products as well. Some of them, some of the things just say, you know, add a PDF to your course with the script. I mean, that's the low-tech way to do it, but some of the tools we can look into for you, and that will do captioning within the video itself.
Right. So if you have a script, putting it into a captioning service is relatively easy. That's not too big of a deal. But most people, though, don't create a script beforehand. And so what we're really trying to facilitate is someone just speaking off the cuff with their video, and then using technology to auto transcribe that. And YouTube is the best service I've seen to do that, at least from a price performance standpoint.
Yeah, but for this, I mean, looking at all the literature in education, it is better to come up with a script first, work from your script, and instead of working backwards on that, come up with a script first, then do your recording.
Yep.
Okay, you asked for comments. Cynthia Porter says if you can show the interfaces of video making tools, that might be nice. More discussion of output files wanted too.
Good feedback, Cynthia. I was thinking the same thing as I was going through that. I think doing a little show and tell of the interfaces, I think that's a good idea. So we will consider that for a future Lunch and Learn, and maybe include kind of a recap of the video creation tools, and then go into some of the other storage, distribution, and classroom specific issues as well. And yes, I agree. Let's include Bill and Margaret. They'd be great. All right, thanks everyone. We try to keep them to an hour, so we won't keep anyone. Thanks for all the questions. Please be sure to share the video with others so that recording gets some use and is benefit, and we'll post the slides as part of the stream.
Plug for the next B2E. It will be delegation on April 18th. And the next Lunch and Learn, HR is joining us. They'll be talking about forms. They're going to talk Hay Group. And they are going to talk
I think job descriptions.
And job descriptions, all kinds of stuff.
Yep. All right, good. Kelly, Corey, Dean, thank you guys. Gene, thanks. Appreciate it. We'll see you guys next time.